Hello and welcome. I'm Steve Clemens, Editor-at-Large of The Hill. Thank you for joining us for a timely discussion on powering America's economy with AI. That's artificial intelligence for lay people like myself, but we're going to go with AI today. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Intuit, for their support of today's event. Over the past 6 months, small business across America have been looking for new ways to ensure their relevance and survival in the coronavirus era. Everybody's been shoved online. Everybody's had to work with and find new digital tools. Today's conversation explores the role technology can play in supporting those engines of the economy. Whether it's getting paid, managing inventory, or accessing capital, many small businesses are utilizing AI technology, which for the longest time was only accessible and affordable to large corporations. They may be using it and not even know they're using it. Although many forums have dramatized the dystopian future driven by technology, AI is currently all around us, driving small business growth and enhanced customer experiences. While we should examine the challenges, we must consider how AI is reinvigorating businesses, creating more and new types of jobs, and also building platforms to help entrepreneurs spur new businesses. We're going to spend the next hour examining the opportunities evolving in AI for small business. We've got a fantastic lineup of speakers to help explore this topic, including members of Congress, experts in the field of entrepreneurship, and small business owners themselves. Before we get underway, there are a few housekeeping notes. You can tweet us at @TheHillEvents using the hashtag #TheHillAI. That's a nice short one. We're broadcasting live and we'll be taking questions throughout the program. So with any live stream, you could experience occasional trouble with the video. Refreshing the page, I'm told, should in most cases fix the problem. I really hope it does. My first two guests can speak to the social and economic impacts of AI technology. Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence, who I was told was running really late, and it's great to see you, Congresswoman, there. It's great to see you there. And Congressman Jerry McNerney, whom I've had the pleasure of interviewing before here, are both members of the House AI Caucus, with Representative McNerney serving as the co-chair. Welcome to you both. Representative McNerney, as we kind of deal with this, what I've always been fascinated, when I worked in the Senate, 20 years ago, we were discussing some of these technological trends right back then, and the literacy, I would say, of the broad membership in the Senate was pretty thin. How is the literacy of your colleagues, both Republican and Democrat, about both the benefits and some of the challenges of AI?
Well, good. Thanks for inviting me, Steve. It's good to see you again. There is a growing awareness of what AI means in the Congress. I'm co-chair of the AI Caucus with Pete Olson, a Republican from Texas, and our mission really is to help educate members of Congress about what AI means. Is it going to create jobs? Is it going to displace jobs? Is it going to dehumanize society? Is it going to make life easier? I mean, all these things are important, but we want to make sure that members of Congress and their staff are educated about what really is there. What can it improve? What are the risks? And how do we go about managing those risks? Do we want to put guardrails in place and so on? And so that's our mission. And I think it's succeeding because I see a little bit more awareness, a little bit less anxiety about artificial intelligence today than I did maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Well, I think, you just tweeted the other day that you're proud of your legislation, the AI in Government Act. And as I just said in the introductory comments, a lot of people don't realize that AI surrounds us all the time. And it's on phones, it's on smartphones, it's on sensors. And as we move into a world where there's a lot more data everywhere informing sensors, to some degree this is going to empower us, I would think. But what do you think your act does with regard to government?
Well, thank you for that question. The AI in Government Act, which just passed the House on Monday on a voice vote, it was a unanimous consent, will empower the government by creating a center of excellence for artificial intelligence within the GSA to provide AI resources to all the other agencies that may need help. And it actually will require the different agencies to get involved in one way or another. So I think it's important because the government affects everybody in one way or another. And small businesses are certainly a recipient of government influence in a variety of ways. So having an artificial intelligence center of excellence in the government will not only create the ability of the federal government to use AI in a responsible way, but it'll also empower small businesses and different agriculture, healthcare, public safety. All these things are going to be benefiting from a real expertise, a responsible expertise in the United States government. So I think it's important that we pass this from the Senate and the president sign it into law as soon as possible.
Thank you. Representative Lawrence, you also remember the AI caucus. You're from Michigan. You have all sorts of business up there, but a lot of it has been manufacturing. You've been trying to say we need to give a boost to black-owned businesses in this country. Do you look at AI as a way to leapfrog for some of these folks, or do you look at it as another speed bump for black-owned businesses in America?
What I see clearly, there is this technology that allows the police department to use AI to identify criminals, and we have this whole facial recognition discussion going on right now. So just on a social level, it is imperative that as we move forward with the Center of Excellence, like my colleague has stated, it's so timely. But in addition to that, in February of last year, I introduced Resolution 503, and it's a bill that would develop the guidelines for ethical development. So when we talk about small businesses and you're using AI to streamline and to expedite funding, getting mortgages, loans, all those things, we have, unfortunately, built-in biases. So the algorithms are what's key to the foundation of an ethical and inclusive industry in AI. And so my contribution in looking at how we move forward as a country with AI, I believe in it, but also know that we're not doing the best job possible in developing removing the biases that are put in the algorithms. So if I have development of the algorithms by a closed group of data that is not reflective of the entire community, then it becomes flawed. And to give you an example, the AI technology for facial recognition shows that people of color, women, people with beards, all those things that go into the developing this technology, it has been proven that it's flawed. There's no debate on that. So the ethical standard. Let me give you an example. When I rolled out the resolution, I was so surprised. I was inundated by the industry related to AI saying thank you, because, like you said, we in government are not up to speed at the rapid advancements and technology of AI. And so it's the Wild Wild West right now. And then instead of the government coming back later with a got you, that's wrong, cease and desist, why not us have a ability that can be implemented in the Center of Excellence, that we come together on some ethical guidelines to make sure that our industry is advancing in the proper way.
I really like the way you framed it, and I'm going to bounce it over to Congressman McNerney for a minute. I've read Brad Smith, president of Microsoft, wrote a book called Tools and Weapons. It deals very much with this issue about how this powerful technology can be used for good, how it can be used for bad, and talked about how Microsoft said no to China on its facial recognition platforms and working with them. But I guess my question to Congressman McNerney is, how do you get the equities between, trust and bad stuff right? So as the Congressman was saying, how to get an ethical dimension, but we all know that there are some ethical players, and then there might be, some questions about how you deal with others, particularly if they're not under U.S. law.
Well, first of all, I just want to say I agree entirely with what my colleague Brenda Lawrence just said. We need to make sure that there's guardrails that prevent bias from impacting negatively any one group over another. And if we don't do that, we're going to miss a big bet. And in order to do that, we have to have transparency. When data is collected, we need to know what the data has in it, where it came from. So there needs to be standards about data, how it's used. Algorithms need to be developed in a culturally diverse setting so that they don't introduce bias. This is absolutely critical if we want AI to be something that's a positive force in society and create opportunity across the spectrum, which is absolutely needed at this point. I mean, we already have a significant digital divide. That's already a problem. And we're working on that to make sure that states have the resources to bring broadband access and availability to everyone in this country. And we want to make sure that when AI is implemented, whether it's small businesses, whether it's government entities, or large businesses, banks, that they implement AI in a way that is fair to everybody. And right now, that's up to us to make sure that that happens that way.
You know, we have questions from the audience, but I want to get one more in of my own to both of you real quick. Representative Lawrence and McNerney both, you know, I often, you know, when I'm on the West Coast of the United States, and you know, no disrespect to Michigan, but I often sort of feel like, you know, the West Coast invents all this stuff and it's fantastic and it's great, and DC regulates it, right? So somewhere else in the country innovates it, you know, Detroit as well, but that Washington regulates it. And so I'm just interested in whether you are both excited about AI. When I think about AI is flowing along, you know, with things like big data and 5G and the Internet of Things. And when you kind of look at this coming interconnectedness of stuff and how we're going to have so many bits of new information coming to it. And so I get all of the concerns, but does that prospect also excite you at the same time? Congresswoman Lawrence?
Absolutely. I know that the future of our country, our competitiveness on a global level, is dependent upon us embracing this technology. And one of the reasons why I'm so happy to be on the caucus with Congressman McNerney is that we need to, in the United States, as we talk about the 5G, we talk about our digital divide, when we talk about how we are transforming our workforce.
Right.
The workforce of tomorrow is going to be less labor intense and more technology dependent. And so we must embrace this. It's about us being competitive with China, being competitive with Japan and India, all these other countries. And so I totally embrace it. But I also want to use this platform of embracing it, that it must be inclusive. It must be inclusive of developing it in our educational system, that we have an educational system that will prepare workers for this technology. And so as we look at our foundation of education in America, are we pushing technology as just as basic as reading, writing, and math? It should be reading, writing, math, and technology, because that's the only way we're going to have a competitive workforce. And so I'm very much in support and think that this is the way for us as the United States of America to continue to lead in a global economy.
Thank you for that. Jerry?
Well, I'm more than enthusiastic. I'm almost giddy. I see so much opportunity with artificial intelligence. I mean, my district is an ag district, and I see opportunity for improving agricultural production and improving the soil at the same time. I live not far from the Bay Area, and the traffic is horrendous. I'd like to see artificial intelligence used to help reduce traffic flow. I know that energy policy, where one of my expertise is going to be improved significantly by artificial intelligence, healthcare, and there's just so many fields that we can see improving American lives. But we have a couple of concerns, and one of them is bias. Another is we want to make sure that it creates employment opportunities and prosperity in this country, and not leave a significant sector of the country behind. So the opportunity is tremendous, and yet it's up to us to make sure that that opportunity is shared equally and grows the economy in a fair way. So that sort of policy challenge is very exciting, as well as the opportunity, what the policy might bring itself.
Well, for the record, I'm giddy too. Go ahead, Congresswoman Lawrence, go ahead.
If I could just piggyback on what Jerry said. So here I am in Detroit. You know, we put the world on wheels. So the autonomous vehicle, the electric vehicle, and I just had a conversation with a manufacturer that we're working on the flying car. So as we talk about mobility, and in Michigan, we have one of the largest R&D segments for automation and automotive innovation. So AI must be a part of that. It's the only way for us to continue to grow. And so when you talk about jobs, and when you talk about our economy,
Right.
when you talk about our technology and the innovation of automotive, AI just is right in the middle of that.
It's all right in there. We have a question from our audience, and I know we're all live and you have votes, so if you got to duck out, you know, I get it. But we've got Brian Lane here. Brian? Brian Lane.
Hello, my name is Brian Lane, and I am the co-founder and one of the directors here at the AI Center of Excellence at GSA. I'm also a graduate researcher investigating the effects of science and technology in federal government. My question for the group is, how best can agencies communicate with Congress in terms of strategies, objectives, and challenges in accelerating AI adoption throughout the federal government?
Jerry McNerney, that sounds like right in your corner.
Well, you're not able to hire lobbyists, so that kind of puts that avenue out of the lane for you. But I think what we can do is we're going to be establishing an Office of Technology Assessment in the Congress in the next year, assuming that the politics is right. That was taken away from the Congress in 1996 by Newt Gingrich. And we need technical assessments to tell us, to inform us in Congress about science and science achievements. And so I think that'll be a big help. But right now we utilize the Congressional Research Service, and we need to establish links to different agencies, especially the GSA, now that the Center of Excellence is going to be there, hopefully. I'm crossing my fingers. But I think it's just a matter of open lines of communication. And we have hearings, and we invite members of the different agencies to testify in front of committees. I think that's an excellent opportunity. And when we prepare for these hearings, it's a good opportunity to sort of see what needs to be discussed in the hearings. So there's going to be opportunity as we move forward, and I look forward to working with you on that, Brad. Thank you.
Representative Lawrence.
Yes, Brad, you bring up an excellent point. And if I could just simplify this and say, speak to us as if we're a 2-year-old. You all in your brilliance and your scientific minds, sometimes it does sound like goobly gob, and it's very, very important. But I would think in your strategy of R&D and your strategy of technology, research and development, that you include in that. Right along with that path is the communication that Jerry talked about, making sure you're keeping the government updated. When you reach those benchmarks, that we know that you're moving forward, and it's not like the package is done here, approve this. Or if you see a barrier, because that's one of the things that I'm very conscious of, is that sometimes we get in our own way. We're trying to help. And sometimes our policies or laws will be a barrier. If you see those happening, don't get mad about it. You know, it's just like, I like to use The Coal Miner's Daughter, the movie, when she said, "I'm not stupid, I'm ignorant. Teach me." And I would think that if you embrace the fact that in your R&D and your scientific technology and processes, that you also have to educate Congress and our policymakers along with you, that will go a long way.
Well, I want to thank you both. That was a great, great discussion on a topic that sometimes sounds like gobbledygook to me too. But I realize, you know, digging into this, AI, it sounds like a term that's far, but it's actually embedded all around us, and that's what I think we need to remember. So, Congressman Jerry McNerney from California, Representative Brenda Lawrence from Michigan, thank you both for spending time with me. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure being with you.
Look forward.
And now I am joined by Congressman Steve Shabbat of Ohio, who has served on the Small Business Committee throughout his time in Congress. And he currently serves as the committee's ranking member. Congressman Shabbat, it's great to be with you again. I love having these conversations with you. I know you've been out in Ohio, and Ohio 1 has received a lot of PPP money. A lot of these small businesses have been shoved in ways online to do things in line. What do you think they most need now that Washington doesn't yet get?
Well, I think a lot of them would like a second round of PPP funding, and I think that's something that we ought to do. I've actually introduced legislation already. We have $135 billion left in the fund. I think we ought to add to that, and we ought to make available to those who didn't get in the first time, those that are hurting, and oftentimes that tends to be the smallest of small businesses, those that have 10 or fewer workers. So we ought to make it available for them. And then we ought to make it available to some of the small businesses who already got a PPP loan, but desperately could use additional help. We would need some metric to determine that we're really helping those that need it the most. At one point, they were talking about small businesses that had 50% or fewer, 50% loss of revenue from previous quarter. That was reduced to 35%. I'd like to see it probably come down even lower than that, because especially if you're in the restaurant industry, for example, if your revenues are off 35% from a year ago, the odds are you're going out of business if you're not already out of business. So there's a lot of things we ought to be working on. I've actually visited over 60 small businesses in my district alone, and have had telephone conferences with other members of Congress across the country with their small businesses. So they still need help, and we need to get our act together here in Congress. And the only way to do it is bipartisan. You got to have Republicans and Democrats working together, and also with the administration. I'm still cautiously optimistic that that's going to happen, but we're not there yet.
Well, I know you're out there. I like watching your tweets, and you've got pictures of visiting the coffee peddler and the heist company in Harrison. And so when you're out there and
Right.
you're talking to these folks, and I think it's probably going on all around the country, do you have any sense of how they are finding new pathways for business online? Are they using, new tech? Is technology a factor in how they are adapting in this time of stress?
Yeah, technology is a big factor. And of course, these small businesses were innovators. They're very creative, even in normal times. And in these pandemic times, the toughest of tough times, they have to look even more aggressively towards things like technology, being more efficient, to be more competitive. In the restaurant industry, for example, we've seen many who were literally closed down for a significant period of time and couldn't serve anybody indoors, and that was their primary way of operations. And they've shifted over. They've gone to online, for example. They've gone to delivery services. They've gone to carry out only. They've used Uber Eats. They're being creative, and much of it is technology. Much of it is online nowadays. Some are thriving. Others are still just hanging on. And so we want to make sure that those that are just hanging on especially make it through this pandemic to the other side, because they employ about half of the people who work in this country. About half of the people work for small businesses. So we need to make sure that they're successful, they survive, to get this economy moving in the right direction.
Steve, everybody is looking for a quick fix to this pandemic, a quick vaccine, a quick test, a quick this or quick that. What is your sense? You're privy to a lot more information than I have. Is this going to be a long haul? Are we going to be seeing small businesses continuing to have to find ways to adapt in kind of an uncertain environment? Or do you see a light at the end of the tunnel right now when it's coming to the pandemic and getting America back online?
Well, the truth is we don't know for sure. But the small businesses across the country are very resilient. And we're certainly moving in the right direction when it comes to a vaccine. There are many potentials out there. Many have gone from animal testing to human testing. And there's good news about that on an ongoing basis. Now, we're not there yet, but I think we're going to be there pretty soon. whether it's going to be next month or a couple months down the road or the end of the year or early next year, we don't know. But that's why it's so important that the public and all of us continue. I don't have a mask on right now, but when I'm with people, I've got a mask on, and we should all be very careful about that sort of thing, and keep our social distancing. So we're heading in the right direction, and the economy obviously has bounced back. We're not where we started out prior to the pandemic, but we're heading in that direction. We had unemployment rates, for example, at all-time lows, under 4% in many cases. And the predictions were we were going to go up to Great Depression numbers to 25% or maybe even more. We headed in that direction. We got up to around 15%. We're down now to 8 or so. So we're heading in the right direction. A lot of people are coming back to work. Businesses are coming back online. A lot of good things are happening. We're not there yet.
Well, Congressman Steve Shabbat of Ohio, ranking member of the House Committee on Small Business, really appreciate your insights. As we know, and as you've told me many times, small businesses are the backbone of employment and economic activity in the country. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Steve. It was great to be with you.
And now it's time for a message from our sponsor, Intuit.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is John Fasoli. I am the Vice President and Segment Leader for our Small Business and Self-Employed Group within Intuit QuickBooks. I'm joined today by Ashok Srivastava, who is our Chief Data Officer and Senior Vice President and one of the smartest people that I know. We're joining you here today during a historically difficult time for small businesses. And we pride ourselves as being a customer-centric company. And so we're here today to share with you how we're looking at the overall problems that our customers are seeing and experiencing and how AI can help to assist them. You may have heard of Intuit. We are the proud makers of TurboTax, Mint, and QuickBooks. I'd love to dive right into the questions. And the first one is pretty high level. So what is AI and how should this audience think about and understand AI?
Artificial intelligence is one of those fields that is transformational. And the reason it's transformational is it literally helps machines start to perceive the world around them and to learn from the world around them so that they can do their tasks better.
I know when we think of AI, we think about typically big companies, big data centers. Small business isn't always the first thing that comes to mind. So could you bring to life, how are small businesses using digitally powered tools with AI today?
Small businesses face unprecedented challenges, and today even more because of the pandemic. One of the things that I'm excited about is that we want to put AI into the hands of small business users in such a way that they can understand the pulse of their business immediately. Everyone wants to know, how much money do I have? What's my cash flow situation? What's my revenue projection? This is a lifeline for small businesses. And AI is really one of the only tools that small businesses have at their disposal to figure that out, to get the right information at the right time in the right context. That's what AI is all about.
I know the two of us, we spend so much time with small business customers, and we've seen just the devastating impact that the pandemic have had on their business. But we've also seen the perseverance, the businesses that are pivoting and finding a way to survive in this environment. One of those shifts has been the shift to e-commerce. And I'm just wondering if you could bring to life, how have small businesses who've made this change adapted, and what kind of AI tools are they using to assist with that?
John, you're so right. As I go out into my neighborhood and into my community, and I see the perseverance of small businesses, it's so inspiring to me. These businesses are making it day by day, and they're doing it through a number of things. They're trying to bring customers in. They're really trying to understand who their customers are. They're trying to make sure that they're serving them the best. Now, artificial intelligence certainly helps them. One of the first things that comes to mind is that today, more than ever, in my opinion, for small businesses, they need access to capital. Now, it turns out that when small businesses go to traditional vendors and traditional lenders, what we find is that they're often declined because they may not have all of their uh, finances in order perfectly for a bank to provide them with a loan. However, what we've tried to do in partnership with your team and many other teams at Intuit is help power QuickBooks Capital, which is a product that really allows small businesses to connect with capital, to get it in short order, and to help them make their payroll. And what we're really excited about is it's giving 60% of small businesses who wouldn't have gotten credit elsewhere, they can get the credit from us so that they can keep themselves going. This is just one of the examples that we have. And I can't tell you how important AI is in this world, because that ability to make a quick decision for a small business so that they can get the capital that they need is all powered by artificial intelligence.
Obviously, we're developing AI tools for broader audiences, even those who aren't Intuit's customers. One of those is Aid Assist, and I'm wondering if you could bring to life what we're doing with the Aid Assist tool during this pandemic.
That's a great question, John. The company launched Intuit Aid Assist in order to help small businesses get access to the funds that were coming from the CARES Act. And one of the most amazing applications of AI actually happened in the development of that product, because we took all of the rules and regulations that came and automatically, through the use of AI, converted it into computer code that could then serve small businesses as they came applying for that funding. And so essentially what happens is, rather than taking them through a very long and complex process of application, we only ask them the questions that they really need to answer, and that helps them just get through the process faster, and it puts money in their hands quicker.
So we've talked a little bit about those who are looking to survive the pandemic and how AI can help. How about those that are looking to get a competitive advantage? Either those who are in industries that are doing fairly well during this pandemic, or coming out of it as we see a strong resurgence of small business. How can AI help give them that edge?
AI is one of these tools that can help people in a variety of spaces. It's something that I'd find extremely exciting. This ability for AI to help customers of Intuit understand what's happening with respect to their books. Now, if I know that I actually have more money coming in, I might be able to take a risk. I might be able to make an investment that others may not be able to make because their finances might be in disarray.
So as you're talking to small business customers, and as you're looking out as a technologist at the longer term horizon, what do you think are the breakthroughs ahead of us when it comes to small business technology?
One of the breakthroughs that is, it's the future that's happening today, that's the way I like to think about it, is the ability for AI to do cash flow forecasting. So when I was running a small business, I remember that, the beginning of the month, I wanted to make sure that I'd have money at the end of the month to pay the rent and to pay for merchandise and all the other things that we were doing at the time. And I didn't have the ability to actually make a prediction. I didn't know who was going to come in the store. I didn't know what they were going to buy. And yet I knew that I had bills to pay. Well, AI is something that can help solve that problem today, because what we've done is built algorithms, computer programs that can look through data and start to make predictions about how much cash flow a small business is going to have, let's say after 7 days or maybe 14 days or after a month or 2 months. And that insight is transformational. It tells you what's going to happen. It may not be perfectly accurate, but it gives you a forecast that you can take to the bank, you can really use, and that's powerful.
I know many of the folks who may be listening to this and our members of Congress are having a lot of very exciting conversations around what the future of AI looks like and how we should be thinking about legislation, particularly in that category of ethical AI. And so as you're an expert in this field, what advice would you give those listening to this call as to how to think about the approach when it comes to the future of AI, particularly for small business?
Yeah, it's a great question and one that I think about a lot. I think first and foremost, it's to understand what AI is and what AI is not. AI is not something that can solve all problems. It's something that does require human understanding and human expertise. I think humans and AI need to work together, not only now, but in the future. And I really view AI as a decision support system. It's something that makes humans do their jobs better. But I can't emphasize enough how important it is that the United States be first and foremost in its AI research and development. And I really do feel that the government plays an important role in funding this type of research. I can tell you that as we look globally, there are players out there that are really making tremendous investments in building the AI muscle for their nations. And it's important that we do that ourselves. I think that funding academia, funding industry, and providing funds to the government institutions themselves, like NASA and other institutions, that can really help to power the understanding of AI, build new AI capabilities. These are things that you invest $1 and you get $10 return after that.
Ashok, thank you so much for lending your time and expertise, as always. Thank you for everybody who has listened to our conversation today.
John, it's been great to talk with you. I love the work that you're doing and everything that we're doing to help small businesses all over the world.
And now it's time to dig into what this technology means for those using it on the ground and what the future holds for entrepreneurs across the United States. This is a really cool group coming up. I'm now joined by John Deary, president of the Center for American Entrepreneurship, Heather Spalding, the founder and CEO of Cambrian, a Kansas-based company that uses augmented reality and machine learning to bring home repair projects to life. And before I say something else, just go online and Google Cambrian. It's got a really cool startup story. I just want to, give kudos where that belongs. And Lorena Camargo, founder and CEO of Pearl Trans Logistics, another awesome startup some time ago that has just grown like crazy. A Southern California-based courier service that uses AI on a day-to-day level to meet client needs. Lorena, let me just start with you. I mean, your introduction when I was reading your bio basically said you basically grew up as a logistics person. Like you were kind of heart and soul into this, and for a rather modest amount of money, you began delivering stuff, getting things, one day delivery. So I'd love to get a kind of quick snapshot of your origin story, but I'd also like to know how you have taken what was once a small startup and used the empowering dimensions of AI to broaden your services.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started in the industry at 17, right out of high school. I was just getting a part-time job, didn't know what a career company was. And, I was just there for an interview, needed a job just to pay for my books for college. And then I just fell in love with the people that I worked with, the customers that we worked for, and just the issues that we helped them solve. So I eventually dropped out of school and started working full time. I was promoted to VP of operations in a few years' time because I just fell in love with what we were doing.
What were you doing?
But after that,
what were you doing, Lorena?
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that.
What were you doing?
I started in customer service.
I see.
And then I worked my way up into dispatch, then VP of operations. But sadly, a few years after that, the company I was working for had to close down, go out of business. So I found, though, an opportunity to venture out on my own. But at that time, I was still 23, going on to had very experience. Which is why, I showed up with my bank statement, budget, and I showed up to the bank. This is what I want to do. This is the logistics company that I want to grow. But because I had very little business experience, they told me no. Come when you've reached sales. So I had to go to a friend of a friend who luckily loaned me out $25,000 so I could start Pearl Trans Logistics.
Well, that's great. And how are you using AI specifically?
So at the beginning, because we were very frugal, we were running on limited funds, we had to rely on technology. So through our dispatch provider, CXC Software, who's based in Phoenix, that's pretty much what runs our company. When the CSRs here place orders over the phone, it's through that software where they input it. And we already have set certain algorithms. They call it intelligent dispatching, which pretty much ranks available drivers based on the geographical location of each order and current driver workloads. And this is very important to our clients because 80% of the work that we do is on demand, which means that 80% of our day is customers calling us, hey, I need this delivered in 2 hours. Hey, I need this delivered in 1 hour. So because of that, we rely on it to gather data on what time of day we have the most surge in orders, and even specific geographical locations or hotspots, which helps our operations team have enough drivers covering that area to provide our clients with the best service and meet their deadlines.
It sounds cool. I know I need you with my world of constantly needing stuff. Heather, you know, Kansas City loves you. I mean, you know, I just kind of got in, I typed the Cambrian in this, and your startup story is fascinating. I have a really hard time figuring out how to drill a high-end screw into a wall and make it stick and to go in. It sounds, I mean, tell us how you can help me.
So really what our technology does, we mostly license to kind of enterprise level businesses, but now, especially with the pandemic, we're licensing to all sorts of retailers and manufacturers. But really what we allow you to do is take a picture of your space. And if you want to see what it looks like with different paint colors on your walls, different wallpaper, different flooring, a rug, we could visualize that for you easily with our technology. So we use a lot of AI in our technology to do the segmentation, to find where the floor is, to find the camera height, to find the orientation of how the floor should go to the walls and the size. So really you can just take a photo of your space, upload it, and then we do all the work for you, and you can see all these different kind of home transformations easily. And so we license that technology to a lot of other companies.
So it's really about interior design
purposes.
Function, and you have it's sort of virtual reality, right?
Yeah, so we call it augmented reality because it adds to your existing environment, whereas virtual reality would create a complete virtual environment. So we do some live AR through apps, but what we found is a lot of the retailers and manufacturers have websites already. So by running our visualizer tool on a website, we can actually reach out to even small businesses that are struggling with this pandemic because their showrooms are closed. You know, for a small fee, we can get them up and running, and they can just send people to their website. The people can visualize the flooring that they want to buy and go ahead and order it online. So that's sort of what we do.
Now, I want to jump to John Deere in a moment, but my understanding is that you won a competitive competition, a kind of pitch competition in Kansas City, got $100,000 or something a couple of years ago. Just before I jump to John, because I want to talk about how in these moments when things are changing, you know, what did you most need? What we heard from Lorena is she most needed that loan from a friend of $25,000 and all this other stuff. I mean, what are the things on your dashboard that you most need to take that spark that you have to something cool and real?
It always comes down to money. As far as even beginning a startup, you need a safety net of some sort, whether you have an education or healthcare through a spouse or whatever it is, you need a safety net, and money is always going to be helpful for that safety net. And as far as building the technology and the vision, you have to be able to hire people, and especially in really specialized, fast growth environments of high growth technology, you need to be able to hire people from all over the world. And so you need to be able to pay for that. So funding is always going to be one of our top issues.
That sounds great. John, how do these two startups sound to you? I know you run the Center for American Entrepreneurship. Do they measure up well?
Well, I think what you just got was two great explanations of why entrepreneurs and the startups that they launch are so incredibly important to the economy and to economic growth and job creation. It's business people, it's entrepreneurs like Lorena and like Heather who take technologies and innovations like AI and get them out into the economy, out into society at large, by way of commercialization, by way of starting a new business. The economics behind that, we know from the great work of American economist Robert Solow, who wrote two seminal papers about this in the 50s and won the Nobel Prize for this insight in 1987, that these innovations that entrepreneurs uniquely are responsible for in getting them out into the economy, by way of the effect on gains in productivity, doing more with less, is really the driver of economic growth and job creation. So yes, I love hearing the stories of entrepreneurs. My colleagues and I, on a regular basis, get out of Washington, D.C. and do roundtables with entrepreneurs. That's where I first met Heather, as a matter of fact, is a roundtable in Kansas. And it's always invigorating and hope inspiring to hear the kind of stories that you've just heard. It makes you very optimistic about the future of America.
John, I'm interested in the degree in terms of your experience, because I know you cover the whole gamut when it comes to entrepreneurship, and that's entrepreneurship in every, it can be in food, it can be as we're talking about tech, it could. But is it your gut that AI and some of these new technology platforms that we're seeing come online, particularly in this pandemic, when so many people have been shoved online and then had to find new tools, does this feel like an inflection point to you in terms of how small businesses are going to find new ways to empower themselves with this technology?
I think absolutely. The pandemic is both a great challenge. It's a great accelerator of trends that I think were already underway. Like, for example, if you think about just the impact of this technology that we're using now to communicate, Zoom or these types of technologies. Telemedicine is a technology that was already beginning to take hold, but I think was experiencing some obstacles, from incumbent providers. AI, certainly, augmented reality, all of these things and the ways that innovators, entrepreneurs like Lorena and Heather, they use these technologies to solve the problems and the challenges that they're confronted with. And I think the pandemic is just a tremendous accelerator of existing trends. And I think had already started and were underway, but have been accelerated by 5 or 10 years, or even new trends or new technologies that have been brought to deal with the challenges associated with the pandemic. And this, as I said, is the great economic service provided by entrepreneurs and how they drive gains in productivity, economic growth, job creation, opportunity. It's folks like Heather and
Lorena.
Yes, who are the great heroes of the economy and are the people who we have to rely on to pull the economy out of the ditch it's in, and they deserve and they need all the help that policymakers can provide.
Well, let me get back to Lorena and Heather and ask you both, because I want people, sometimes we hear the words AI and it just kind of eyes glaze over. They don't know what it means. Lorena, you gave I think a very interesting example about the sort of spatial location and timing and looking at the different things. I'm more used to how much I used to hate those bots talking to me, those customer service bots online. They've improved a lot. I vastly prefer them now to real human beings. It's actually true. But I'm interested, if you were to kind of look at your particular business, or maybe others in your business, as you think of it, because I know you're trying to fix problems all the time, what would you like to see AI solve for you if it could? Lorena?
Well, one of the things, though, that you mentioned about chat boxes, I loved what Intuit did in the segment before. This is still a people business. There's still going to be humans. So behind those chat boxes, there's still, phone number that you could call to get that human interaction. As far as AI goes, it's just really exciting, everything that's happening now. We're actually trying to take GPS a step further. recently we started working with more pharmaceutical companies because pharmacies want to reduce the amount of people traffic that go into their facilities. So they're looking more to outsource to deliver these prescriptions. So we never deliver to as many residences as we have this year. However, because this is LA, there's more dense areas where it's large apartment buildings, there's gated communities. So even though, there's like a certain address, 10202 Washington, doesn't mean like that the entrance is there. So now we're trying to use, we're implementing a technology where based on where the actual building is on the property, it'll speed up telling the driver which gate or door to go through to make sure that these deliveries are done a whole lot quicker. So really, it's just exciting just seeing everything that's happening and just trying to implement it in our business to better serve our clients.
And Heather, that's a great answer, Lorena. But Heather, what kind of skills, tasks, tools, problems would you like to, see this network of AI tools help you solve that you haven't solved yet?
Yeah, like Lorena mentioned, the last speaker that talked about the Intuit books, I'm going to have to look into that because that could be really helpful to see some trends that maybe I'm not catching in cash flow, because cash flow is always going to be an issue for small business. But I know for us, how we would like to use AI in our next steps is to take what we're doing now a few steps further so it's even better for the users. So how we're going to do this is by mapping a space and measuring the area so we can tell a person this is how many tiles or this is the amount of rugs or flooring that you need to order, just to make it that much easier. So it kind of takes out the middle steps to where somebody could visualize a floor in their space. They could take the measurements automatically using our tool and then order it right there. And so basically we're making a really great end-to-end product for the manufacturers and the retailers to get to the consumer, let them kind of take charge end-to-end. And then we'll probably use Lorena, her logistics, to get it delivered to their house on time.
Wow, great.
I'm here.
Well, we've got that's good. We have a question from the audience for the panel. So let's, David, do you have a question?
Hello, my name is David Rickster, former U.S. Department of Treasury official and CEO and founder of M Street X, a place-based fintech platform that will leverage artificial intelligence to identify flexible capital based on a small business's profile. I'm curious to learn from our practitioners how they believe we can leverage AI to support the accelerated transition into the fourth industrial revolution. Initially, we had thought that this process was going to take 5 to 10 years. However, due to COVID-19, we are now seeing that this has now been compressed to 6 months.
So, Heather, you want to tackle the fourth industrial revolution question?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think it's kind of what John had talked about. One of the great things about small businesses and startups is that we're really agile and we're very resilient. So we can move quickly, and instead of doing layoffs and furloughs and having to re-examine, our budgets that we had set for 5 years, we can quickly move into a space where we see a need. And this is where you get startups popping up and rapid growth. And the great thing about AI is it's essentially doing the work of people at a very fast rate. So even for us, when we started, we did algorithms by hand to see where the walls were and highlights and shadows and stuff. But once we got into using AI to do it, it just made it faster, more efficient, more accurate. And this is really for fintech and for investment. What David was saying, I think it's just going to be, there's going to be a lot of people seeing opportunity here and seeing holes and gaps and being able to jump in and rapidly fill those spaces with a startup that uses this technology to just really rapidly build something that we can use immediately. I mean, it sounds great to have a technology that could fit us to an investor based on our profile. I mean, that's one of those things that would be incredibly useful for startups.
And let me not jump to John. John, I think what's interesting about David's question, well, there were two parts to it. Really, one was about flexible and more nimble financing, based on a profile of a company, which through reputational research, through lots of other data and information seems to be something doing, and then kind of looking at really the Internet of Things dimension of that. But I'm interested in the finance side because I hear this from everybody. We just heard it earlier from our two colleagues on this panel. Money and financing. You go to most large banks, not all of them, but most large banks. You've got to be sort of a sizable small business to get a loan. I mean, it used to be at B of A, the minimal loan was $5 million. I don't know what it is now, but that's so much larger than most new ventures and new entrepreneurships that are living off credit cards and neighbors and friends for support. So I'm just interested in your insights onto that financial dimension.
Yes. So, I mean, the problem with that new businesses have always had with banks, or they've had a couple of problems. One is the problem that you just talked about, and that is that the costs to the bank, the paperwork, the personnel, the resources that go into the credit analysis decision are pretty much the same, regardless of if the loan is a small loan or a larger loan. And so it makes sense for banks to focus on larger loans because for the same amount of input, they potentially earn much more. And so small businesses, small loans tend not to interest banks. The other problem that new businesses have with banks, of course, is that startups tend not to have the things that banks need to lend against. You don't have a track record, you don't have any inventory, you don't have any earnings, you don't have a credit history. So this is the whole realm of new businesses and startups. For both of those and other reasons, was ripe for disruption from other startups, from fintechs, to step into that space and meet the needs of startups, particularly in terms of the application of technology to the credit analysis decision. As you said, it's a lot of data to input, and it's much faster, as Heather pointed out. It's much faster. It's much cheaper to do that kind of analysis by way of technology. And this is another area that I think we've seen a great acceleration of this by way of the pandemic. If you look at the stock prices, for example, of companies like Square and PayPal and other fintech companies, they, like other stay-at-home or COVID stocks like Zoom and Amazon and other companies, are soaring. So I think that this is going to be, that the pandemic in a way opened up this opportunity for great acceleration of this process that was already underway, but has tremendously accelerated, and I think is going to change the whole realm of financing of new and small businesses forever.
Thank you for that. Look, I know we're nearly out of time, but I want to get one more question in, if I can, for Lorena, and use her mind and how she puts together companies and help somebody out who's asking this. But from Ann.
Hi, my name is Ann Barth. I'm the Executive Director of Tech Connect West Virginia, based in Charleston, West Virginia. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about how this will affect small businesses in rural America.
So, Lorena, I'm going to put the ball on you. How can you take the cool stuff you have built and replicate, the most important parts of that for a non-urban setting? I think it's a great question.
Yeah, absolutely. So our challenges here for deliveries is that it's such a dense area, but in like a rural area, there's more distance in between stops. So you really have to make use of space capacity to make sure you're not just using a driver just for one run. Try to see what you could pair up. So definitely, even so, technology is as important here in a dense area, a rural area as well. There's so many successful career companies that I know in the Midwest. I'm out of answers how they do it. I learned from them what to put in practice here in LA as well.
Well, before we just close out, let me ask Heather this too. Heather, could you have invented your virtual reality, see all the new cool stuff, redo your interior place if you were in Morgantown, West Virginia?
Would they be able to use it?
No, would you have been able to create it if you had been there? Well, I guess what I'm finding is a lot of people,
So,
what Ann was asking is, what can tech do? And what I'm finding is a lot of small towns in America have brilliant people in them with great ideas.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's one of the great things about technology is it really doesn't matter where you're at. So no matter where you're at, as long as you have a good internet connection, you could do training virtually using something like AWS or Microsoft or whatever, or you could build your own servers and train at your house. The drawback of a very rural area might be if they don't have gigabit internet, it might be all day for them to upload or download data sets. So that's one of the things that would be really important to maybe these smaller towns versus a larger city. But in terms of talent comes from anywhere. And if AI is something you're interested in building, there's so many great resources online. There's no reason why a student, I mean, we've hired people with no college experience that have just taught themselves, brilliant people from rural areas that have taught themselves really valuable skills, and they wanted to know more about AI, and we set them on it. So talent comes from anywhere. You can build this anywhere. That's the only thing that would maybe hold back a smaller town.
Broadband connectivity. I hear about every day when I talk about business or moderate anything. John, quick thought, anything?
Well, I would just echo what Heather said. I think she's demonstrated Kansas is not that different from West Virginia, and she's been able to produce this incredibly sophisticated new business that, as you pointed out, has won awards, is changing the way that people approach the redesign of their house. And so as long as the technology is there and the talent and the person who has the ideas and they have the basic resources in terms of access to capital, as we talked about, then I think that these kinds of businesses can be produced anywhere in America.
I just say, just as we close up, I have the privilege of interviewing a lot of people, and lately it's been a lot on the COVID-19, coronavirus, health pandemic, when are we going to get a vaccine? It is nice to hear the I guess, optimism and to some degree how well you've all done amidst a lot of stress and pressure. I love this conversation. Thank you so much for joining me. Heather Spalding, founder and CEO of Cambrian, Lorena Camargo, CEO and founder of Pearl Transportation and Logistics, and John Deary, president of the Center for American Entrepreneurship. Thank you all very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks for having us.
That brings us to the end of our program today. A big thank you to Intuit for their support and to all of you attendees for joining us for this very important discussion. For those of you who missed any of the conversations this afternoon, we're going to have a video up of the event shortly, and you can watch it at your leisure. I'm Steve Clemens. Be well.